I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Widjabul Waiable people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name's Ellen Fleeton. I'm a Future Students Officer at Southern Cross University, and I'm joined today by an amazing panel to talk about studying regenerative agriculture. So what I might do is ask our panellists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about your connection to Southern Cross. You can go first, Hannah Beth.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's Dr. Hannah Beth Luke. Our regenerative agriculture course is in our Faculty of Science and Engineering. I've been working in this faculty for 11 years now, and I came to this faculty because I was always passionate about that place where land, society, community, science, environment and industry all come together, and worked in the faculty for many years and teaching various elements of geology and weather, climate. And the question that always interested me was, well, why is it that people aren't understanding or acting on the science? And that led me to do a lot of research in that social space. And that first led me to look at land use change and what is driving land use change. And now I do a lot of work with farmers across Australia and running some big research projects that are looking at, well, what are the things that are driving farmer decision making? Why do they do the things that they do? And watching this emergence of regenerative agricultural practice and thinking across Australia has been a very exciting time. And so it was a few years ago now that I was had started having some discussions with Lorraine Gordon and the Institute for Ecological Agriculture. They had this idea for this regenerative agricultural course, and that's been a real pleasure to be able to bring together. And that's something I'll probably be up in the next question, I guess. But but yeah, it's been a real journey to work with some incredible practitioners out in the field and look at how regenerative agriculture itself is transforming farming, because it's not just about changing the practices on your farm. It's actually about changing the way that you look at and understand and work with your farm. And so there's many different elements of that, but I'll hand over to Jackie for now.
Hi, so I'm Jackie Morrison. I started studying part-time here in 2020. I work full-time as a boiler operator, and my husband and I have a small farm. We run bees, cattle. We do a lot of different types of compost, and we're putting in pecans as well. So, Southern Cross is a really good fit for me, being able to study online but still come into campus when I could. And I'll sort of leave why I got into regenerative agriculture for the next one.
That's my next question. Thank you so much. And we are so fortunate to be joined by such amazing students and academics for these panels, so thank you both. So Hannah Beth, can you explain, I guess for me and everyone in the audience as well, what is regenerative agriculture and what makes it different to your typical agriculture?
Great question. Thank you. A good place to start as well. So as I said, it's not just about changing the practices, it's about changing the thinking around how we manage land. It has there's a suite of practices that sit under that. Everything, and a real component of that that's very key is the soil health and keeping the soil covered, ensuring that you have a more healthy environment on and around your farm. So that's looking to the biodiversity on your farm. It's into looking at practices that increase that biodiversity to a point where it will looking at how that can improve things like issues with pests. It's also around looking at things like supportive landscapes. They call them prairie strips in the States, and just having really healthy environments adjacent to the farm. And it very much links in with addressing our emissions around climate change as well, because if you have, say, a prairie strip or a supportive landscape, these can do a huge amount in terms of stopping erosion on the farm, stopping leaching, and things that can create many more greenhouse gases to be emitted into the atmosphere, such as nitrous oxide. It's 300 times more active as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So trying to reduce the nutrients that are leaving a farm, but also trying to reduce the inputs on a farm and create a more circular system. And that's through getting those things going, through looking at the biodiversity, through having a more healthy system, having a more healthy soil, looking at how water moves through the landscape. So basically keeping things in the system, keeping the system more healthy, and at the same time running a productive farm business. So keeping those things in balance. And I think what's really important about regenerative agriculture as well is it also brings in the social, it brings in the people in the community, it looks at a lot of the focus. There's a lot of people say, well, about scaling up regenerative agriculture, which I think is an important question, but it is also about trying to support the family farm in Australia and trying to ensure that farms themselves become more resilient, and that is in relation to the crops that they're putting into the farm. It's in the way that they do that, the way that they manage livestock within that system, but it's also the social and also the value chain and how people run their business, which all comes back to my research. So I find that very interesting. But that's in a long nutshell.
No, that's really, really interesting to me, and I'm sure to the audience as well. Jackie, did you have any thoughts to add about the differences between regenerative agriculture and typical agriculture?
Well, I started studying agriculture when I left high school about 15 years ago, and very much focused on very, very conventional. And yeah, it's like Hannah Beth has pretty much put it in a nutshell, where a lot of farmers really just want something better for their land. They want their land to produce more than just food. They want it to be part of the community, and they want to leave something better for their kids than what they have originally. So that's what regenerative agriculture has always sort of meant to me.
And I'll step in there for a moment, because the work that I've been doing with the soil CRC surveys has shown that across Australia, the single most important thing to all farmers is to have the ability to pass on a healthy environment to their future generations. So it's actually a goal for all farmers, and I think always has been. But it's a really exciting way to be approaching it, I think.
Yeah, it's a really lovely way to look at it as well. So our Bachelor of Science with the major in regenerative agriculture, it's always a tongue tie. It's been one of our most popular degrees since we introduced it. Why do you think that is?
So regenerative agriculture as a term, people say, well, why don't you just do a sustainable farming course? Why don't you do something else? And there's some really interesting things around that. And I say the work that I do with the projects in the Soil CRC, I work with a lot of farmers across Australia, and we have a lot of discussions about, well, what is regenerative agriculture and why is it different? And linking back to your question, but the other question. So restoration is to put something back the way it was. To sustain something is to keep it the way it is, and to regenerate is to make it better. And so when I was over in, say, the Eyre Peninsula about 3 years ago, and we did a workshop, and at the end of it, I mentioned the new courses we're doing, and they said, regenerative agriculture, I don't really know what that is. This doesn't mean much to me. And over the time I've been working with that group, I've been watching the awareness and the way that people understand it change. And what I think is really exciting about it is attracting young people to farming. And so our course, so a couple of months ago, I was with that group in the Eyre Peninsula by Zoom, and they said, we can't get young people along to all the grower days and all the things that we're doing. And someone else in the group said, well, except for the Regen Ag ones. And I just watched the penny drop for a few people in that meeting. It's like, so it's actually exciting young people and bringing them into farming. And I think that is really exciting. So what I love about our course is it's not just, we have actually a lot of farmers in the course, about 2/3 of the students are farmers, but it's also about 1/3 of them have never been in farming before. And historically, I think farming has struggled to attract new people into the sector. And that's what I think is bringing people in. It's capturing their attention. It's bringing together good ecological management, productive farms, in a course where all of these incredible students are coming together in a melting pot. Aren't they incredible students? Yep. What a bunch.
There's a hell of a range.
Yeah, such a range of students, such different backgrounds. But I think that's what it is. And the students themselves have created what's become such an exciting course, and they're our best ambassadors. So thanks for that, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, again, I'm learning a lot today, so thank you both. What sort of experiences can students expect when they're in the course? You know, field work, placements, things like that. What does it actually look like?
I'm going to hand that over to Jackie
Hand it to
first.
Jackie?
Yeah.
So there's a fair range involved, like with the residentials. We just had a soil management residential recently, 2 days. We had 1 day in the lab looking at soil biology, mesofauna, everything from microscopic bacteria, and having sort of a good talks from experts in the field. And the second day was a field day, going out and having a look at different farms, different methods of management, different motivations. We're guided around by Gavin Tinning. I think he's Sustainable Projects Officer for Richmond Valley Landcare, so here with a wealth of information on the effects of different management on farms. So that was a pretty good example of sort of where we go and what we do. Really wide range of coursework, from your hardcore science, getting into chemistry and biogeochemistry and whatnot, to more general farm practices and motivations behind them and outcomes from them. So it's sort of something for a bit of everyone.
Yeah. And how do you find the mix between theory and practice in the degree?
Oh, well, I'm a bit of a soil biology nerd, so I love the hardcore theory on what drives different soil biology, what drives different outcomes, and different seasonal conditions and all that sort of thing. But there's also, it's got to work in the field as well as in the lab. So there's sort of a pretty good balance, and I think that's something that Hannibeth brushed on too, with you get a really wide range of students, from people who just don't want to look down a microscope, they want to know how does it work in the field with trials, to people who just love that world down the microscope and the drivers of it. So yeah, a bit of a range.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. Like, I really value the really different backgrounds that our students come from, and they're a real range of ages and experience and other histories, and plus a lot of school leavers as well. And they bring that different interest and those different skill sets that they bring and that they focus on through their degrees. It's going to mean that our students will end up in a real diversity of different roles at the end. I think that's really exciting. So that's probably a question coming up at the end.
That was my next question for Jackie, actually. When you finish your degree and you graduate, Jackie, where do you see yourself and what do you hope to achieve?
Originally I wasn't really sure. I just knew that I wanted to get better practices happening on my farm, and it's actually been really good talking to so many different people, talking to people like Hannibeth, and it's really opened up a whole world of different career options. So personally, I'd like to go on and do a doctorate and go into further studies and sort of contribute back to the science, sort of the science of agriculture. But yeah, we've got people who are just, they're nearly retired and they're simply doing it because they can and they want to. There's people that want to get into sort of finance and marketing with Regen Ag. But yeah, I'm really interested in sort of contributing back to that science.
Yeah, that's fantastic that you do want to give back. But as you say, there's such a broad range of options for people to undertake. Hannibeth, where else do you see our graduates going?
Well, yeah, again, it is a real range, and it comes from the different motivations for different students. Obviously, some of our farmers are full-time managing a farm, and they just want to apply this knowledge, and they're using their own farm as a case study to apply the knowledge, and they'll go back to their farm with renewed ideas and passion. That's one place, I think. And I think another area that's going to be really important is DPI, local land services, and government organisations across Australia, equivalent, PIRSA and others. But I think what I'm finding from my research is that people really want to hear about good land practices from other people. So I think that our students are going to be in real demand in terms of being agronomists, being out there advising other people. And even if you go through down that research path, if you do then go back into that role, there's so much that you can offer farmers out in the field, literally, and in helping them to support them. And that's what the units are oriented to in the final year, really giving students that understanding of, well, how do we work with farmers? How do we help them to better understand their landscape and transform it into more regenerative practices? So agronomists is really important, and whether they're private or work for other organisations are popping up everywhere. Research is popping up everywhere around regenerative agriculture. It's fantastic to see, and I think that's how science should be. It's looking at what the farmers are doing, and they're saying, I think this is working really well. It's that researchers who are half step behind saying, okay, well, let's understand how that works so we can see how it might work for others elsewhere. So there's also, I'm actually a bit excited because there's a lot of students who are going to be graduating this year as our first cohort from the Regen Ag degree, and quite a few of them are really interested in following up that research. So the honours pathway, there's the 1-year honours, and then there's PhDs and masters and research careers and things like that. I think that's also exciting, a place to go, and because then you're really on the front line of pushing that knowledge, helping to understand how the soil health is and the soil biology is linking in with the other biology and biodiversity around that farm system, and how that links in with productivity. Some excellent research questions that I'm sure will be answered by our students.
That's great. I've got one last question for you both, and that is, what piece of advice would you give to anyone thinking of getting into either studying or working in the regenerative agriculture space? You can start, Jackie.
Well, I'm on the Uni Mentor team as well, and I actually get quite a number of people who have just gotten on the Uni Mentor page, had a scroll through and gone, oh, this person looks like they, have the same sort of life busyness and goals and interests as me. I'll give them a ring, and they get in touch and just ask as many questions as they want about how the course works, how much time does it take you, what sort of options does it open up for you, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's Uni Mentor program's a great first point of call, just to find someone who's got the same sort of interest and ask all the questions you like about how it fits in with your life and where it might take you.
Absolutely. Those support services here that are available at Southern Cross University are second to none, and they are just so useful in ensuring that you are successful in your degree and in your studies, because we all want to see you succeed when you're here with us. What about you, Hannah Beth? Any words of wisdom?
Yeah, look, I think you've hit the nail on the head of one of the things that is really, really important is developing that social network from the very beginning. And, I would really encourage anyone who lives locally to study on campus. I think it really does create more of a cohort feel of students who get to know each other over time. I think that's really a really good thing, so consider that. If you do study online, you still come in and you still get practical experiences and residentials and field trips, but I think that's a really good thing to consider. But I'm just really interested to hear what questions people have as well, and happy to answer any queries anyone has.
You're always one step ahead of me.
Sorry.
No, it's great. Now we do have a few minutes to open up to the audience for questions. So please, if you have a question, we would love to answer it for you. Cross-institutional studies. Would you like to answer that, or would you like me to take that one?
I think maybe you might take that one.
It's a great question. So cross-institutional studies are a fantastic option if for some reason there's an area of interest that you want to explore that we don't offer here at Southern Cross. However, it would be my instinct to say, in the regenerative agriculture degree being one of one in Australia, the only one of its kind, that you wouldn't necessarily need to explore that avenue, because I imagine all the degrees, all the subjects within that degree on offer would sort of satisfy that learning and what you needed to know to be job ready and learn everything. Yeah, go for it, Jackie.
I'm actually looking at studying fungal biology through UQ over the summer session, which the uni has already sort of said is you can contribute to your degree. So what I found was there's so many really good units at Southern Cross here that are sort of applicable to Regen Ag. So you wouldn't really want to study at another uni and just do one subject here for Regen Ag, because there might be like 10 different subjects that really make up that Regen Ag. But you can study here easily and go, I really want to specialise in fungal biology, so I'm just going to do a couple of specialist units at other unis. So it sort of works one way but not the other sort of thing.
But also, things are evolving, and we're always listening to what students need. So if students really call for a unit and there's enough interest in it, we also can look at how things will evolve into the future as well. And we have the postgraduate courses in regenerative agriculture, a graduate certificate, graduate diploma, and hopefully we'll be looking at a masters related to that in the future as well. There's a lot happening here in this space, and I don't think we're just the first in Australia. We're the only in Australia, but I still haven't found any others in the world. If anyone can correct me, but I think we're the only course in the world in regenerative agriculture in the undergrad space. So it's a really exciting place to be.
Yeah, it definitely is. Does anyone have any further questions?
Yep, excellent question. Yeah, we have a very sort of broad suite of previous practices, experience that people may have undertaken. We actually quite frequently will look at the range of previous studies and experience that anyone has that they bring to Southern Cross, and we'll give them advanced standing for those units, or even in the postgraduate space, if people have been, say, working as a consultant in the space for a long time, and they have worked up to this point and can demonstrate a lot of workplace knowledge and experience, then we also will consider their on a case-by-case basis, people for the postgraduate qualifications.
That is all we have time for in this panel. I'd like to thank our amazing panellists very much. An amazing conversation today. And if you are thinking about applying or enrolling at Southern Cross University, we would love to welcome you to our beautiful university community. Thank you very much.